Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. It's a little after 10:30. We need to get going. The Agriculture and Natural Resources Subcommittee is now in session. Kyle, please take the roll.
Representative Fritz. Here. Representative Holsey. Representative Jones. Representative Reedy. Here. Representative Shaw. Here. Representative Todd. Here. Representative Travis. Here. Vice Chairman Darby. Here. Chairman Grills.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Kyle. Representative Travis, if you would lead us in the prayer and the pledge to our flag. All stand, please.
States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any personal orders this morning? Chairman or Representative Doggy? Darby. What I have Clay Doggett on my mind. Sorry.
Man, oh man. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've got to welcome my 6-year-old. Not many times she gets to come up with me today, but that's the boss of the family there, Sloan Darby. Say hello.
Chairman Darby, if you would give us a little recap of last night.
Well, I'm going to incriminate myself by giving you all the details today. But it was a fantastic. Everybody's quest is different, and for my family to be able to play for the University of Tennessee, I'm blessed, Chairman, blessed. And thank you for everybody that's asked. It's been one heck of a ride, and I appreciate the support from everybody.
And not just that, both girls got to play last night.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. All right, that's awesome. That's awesome. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Representative Travis.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Darby, is this another one coming up? Is she going to be the next star?
Well, let me tell you, this probably won't be the jury setting, the last one that she'll ever see. And I've told other ones, I'd speak to a group of mayors there a few weeks ago, and they said, Darby, your oldest 2 girls, man, they can shoot and play. I said, what about your third? I said, well, let me tell you. She's had 3 mothers her entire life with the sisters, so she's kind of stubborn, and she'll be on a team and have a number and everything. It'll just say Tennessee State Penitentiary on the front of her jersey. Yeah.
Oh no! I'm sure she's going to be a little bit better than that, Tandy. Anyone else? I do want to recognize that this week is National Agriculture Week, and if y'all are looking for farmers to take out and buy their lunch or buy their supper, just holler at me. I got a list of them. We'll be happy to accommodate you in any way, shape, form, or fashion. You know, I said I had a list. I had a list. With that, we'll go ahead. If there's no other personal orders, we'll get on with our first bill on our calendar, and that will be HB 0993 by Chairman Powers. You are recognized because you have a motion and a second.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll take a personal pledge if you don't care. The prayer and the pledge reminded me a while ago of just something just happened last week. My mother-in-law, she always bends down by her bed and prays at night, and she took her little, it was her great, this would be her great grandchild and my great niece, but anyway, she bent down and she was 5 years old and started praying too, and so my mother-in-law just quit real quick and started listening to her, and she started listening to her, and her prayer, and she said, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America. That was her prayer. So she had just heard that in school and copied it. But I do have an amendment on this bill, so it is Amendment 5863, and that makes the bill.
We have a motion and a second on the amendment. Are there any questions? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The amendment is on the bill. Chairman Powers, you're recognized.
Okay.
On the bill as amended.
House Bill 993, this advances a fair and efficient state rather than the federal regulation of Tennessee surface mining and reclamation that is cost-effective for Tennesseans. In 2018, if you all recall, the General Assembly enacted the Primacy and Reclamation Act of Tennessee, directing the governor to pursue state oversight of the act known as primacy. While primacy remains an important goal, it is vital that the state-oriented program be fiscally responsible. The state is responsible for 50% of the cost to administer the program, and the federal government is responsible for 50%. In the state's efforts to obtain primacy, we learned that many of the sites that we had out there were under-bonded, and that $33 million the federal government is liable for would be transferred to us. So in light of these economic realities, this bill would like to postpone our efforts to obtain primacy until we can be assured that the underbonding is addressed by the federal government. During this postponement period, TDEC will continue to provide annual reports to the speakers of both chambers on surface coal mining in Tennessee. This bill is critical for ensuring that the state-operated primacy program will carry on the tradition of fiscal responsibility that has served Tennesseans so well. With that, Mr. Chairman, I renew my motion. Be glad to take any questions from the committee.
Chairman Reedy?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chairman Powers, how long have you been working on this? and first I got here, it was in 2014, and it seemed like that 2015, we had started the ball rolling on this, and here we are today.
Chairman Powers?
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, it was 2015, the first time that we ever actually passed the bill, and in 2018, we're actually to get it to the governor to look at it, to take it on, because we had to, there was a note on it too, you know, and we had to provide 50% of the funding and everything. So that's when we finally got it passed through, but now we're looking at some under-bonded liability that we don't want to incur.
Chairman Reedy?
And thank you, Mr. Chairman, once again. And of course, it's to throw some history towards the committee, and that's what we were finding out. It was a lot of the miners and those companies were going into Kentucky because they had primacy over their own lands, and we're trying to do the same thing that Kentucky is doing. But you know, I understand the position of the bill, the situation we're in, and of course the need for postponement being necessary. But once again, I appreciate your work on this piece of legislation.
You recognize?
Yes, thank you. And Tennessee was the only state in the union that did not have primacy, that was doing mining. So what we were trying to do is just get on board like every other state, be able to do our own permitting, our own inspecting. We actually traveled to the capital of Kentucky and met with them. How are y'all doing this? So that's why we're trying to do this. And we just want to make sure that before we actually get too involved in it, we get all this corrected with OSM.
Question been called? Representative Shaw?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to comment, I served on this committee probably longer than anybody in here, and I think that's when I got to know Chairman Powell, was when he first brought this legislation. That's how long he's been dealing with it.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you.
Seeing no other questions, we'll be voting on HB 0993 to send it on the full. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. On the full.
Thank you, Mr.
Have a good
Chairman.
one. Thank you for coming and visiting us.
And committee.
Next bill on our calendar is House Bill 833 by Representative Burkhart. He has asked to roll that till next year, so without objection, roll to next year. I do not see Representative Towns. Roll to the Hill. Next, we have on our agenda HJR 0050 by Representative Jones. We have a motion. We have a second. You are properly before the committee. Representative Jones, you are recognized.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair and colleagues. It is good to be on this side of the dais. To introduce HJR 50. Every level of government has a substantive obligation to proactively protect our right to pure water, clean air, and a healthy environment. These are rights that don't just belong to the people here, but they belong to our children and into generations yet to come. This amendment is going to bring Tennessee in line with states like Montana, New York, and Pennsylvania that have enacted a green amendment, an environmental protection amendment in their state constitutions. And really, I wanted to defer to the witnesses who are here today to talk about this amendment. If that's okay, Mr. Chair, to go out of session to hear from them, and then I'll be happy to take any questions, and also want to open up the questioning for the witnesses as well.
Without objection, we'll go out of session. And the individuals we have on our list are Jonathan Neal, Isaac Santos, Sundeep. I do not know how. If y'all would come forward. You each have 3 minutes to make an opening statement, and then we will ask questions after that. If you would, state your name, and then we'll go in order, if it's okay, from left to right.
Our left to right?
My left to right. You're recognized.
My name is Saveet Guntasala. I'm here as a constituent of the state of Tennessee and would like to speak on this resolution. Fundamentally, this resolution protects the economic interests of Tennesseans, especially our farmers. Many of you are farmers and agricultural business owners and have so much combined agricultural expertise that, frankly, I wish I had more of. I didn't get to major in agriculture, but some of the most interesting classes to me were soil and ecology back when I was at MTSU. I remember the first time I heard about no-till and regenerative agriculture and really looking at soil as the basis of our entire economy. Agriculture is a defining feature of Tennessee, and protecting it has always been a defining role of not only this subcommittee, but this House. And when agriculture is in danger, it is this body that is forced to pull out its wallets, and this resolution is precisely about that. PFAS is the clearest example of how dire our problems are in Tennessee. You all know this. PFAS, these forever chemicals that take ages to break down, have wreaked economic and emotional havoc for so many farmers, as the Institute for Ag and Trade Policy reports right here in Tennessee. So take the example of Maine, where PFAS contamination poisoned milk and beef so that they could not be sold, affecting the health of not only the farming families, but these farmers had to kill all their livestock and dump all their milk without any compensation because of this contamination. And this isn't an isolated example to Maine. The situation with the Tennessee River is one of the most horrific examples. In 2021, the federal government had to notify thousands of individuals here in Tennessee about PFAS contamination, and we were one of only 6 states that had over 2,000 individuals, 2,000 farmers on that list that the federal government had to notify saying, hey, your farms have been contaminated by PFAS, and you might be in a situation where you have to kill all your livestock and dump all your milk. Luckily, Tennessee has done a phenomenal job in working to identify these issues, to protect farmers, and we know how bad that problem is. And TDEC, our large farms, our small farms, even seemingly unrelated industries like 3M are currently being forced to spend millions to combat these issues. And in the worst cases, it's this very body that's ending up footing the bill, not to mention the litigatory nightmare that this is causing in Tennessee as court cases are starting to pile up. Our farmers, our businesses, we deserve better, and this resolution, this constitutional amendment, is exactly about that. But it is fundamentally different from any other resolution. So constitutional amendments, as all of you know, they don't actually provide any cause of action for a private citizen like me against another citizen or a corporation. So to quote John Oman of the American Bar Association, who some of you might be familiar with, he said, just as I can't sue Twitter for violating free speech rights, I can't go sue a chemical corporation for violating my constitutional right to a clean environment. That's not what this bill is about. It's about protecting the natural, the scenic for future generations, and making sure that when this intersection between businesses, private citizens, and the government happens, all three are protected against needless expenditure.
Your 3 minutes is up, but thank you, and we will come back with questions in a few minutes. You're recognized. State your name, please.
Good morning. My name is Jonathan Neal. Today, I want to be clear and to the point on my support of this resolution. This resolution can and will have a beneficial effect on Tennessee farmers and their legacies. Let me tell you a short story. Both of my maternal grandparents came from family farms in West Tennessee, a place outside of Memphis called Somerville, in case any of you have ever been there. Both of them were able, through the health and regularity of their farms, to send their children to college, actually multiple of their children, not even just these two, and where they met and decided to start a family together. The support continued after my grandparents married, and they were able to have children who went back every summer, growing up in the same sun, air, and water as those who came before. Those children, in turn, were able to send their own children to college, me and my cousins. And thanks to one of my cousins, who just had her 3rd baby, the next generation is in a position to go if and when they want. I am here today, healthy and well, quite literally due to the health and legacy of those 2 farm plots. There are over 69,000 farms in Tennessee who made over $3.5 billion in 2022 alone, each with families like mine and yours, each with equal stories, some different from mine, some close to the same. Families all concerned only that their children will grow up, as Ben Franklin once said, happy, healthy, and wise. There is a line across generations from our farms and farmers that leads to each one of us here today. Any and all legal protections for them and those who are coming up after them is vital. This resolution will make it clear that the state is unable to do harm to this vital root of our society and ensure the responsibility of our farms is affixed to our farmers without interference, if only because it'll allow our great state and the freedoms it enjoys to continue on. Thank you for your time.
Santos. I want to thank you all so much for allowing us the time to speak this morning. We can all agree that Tennessee is a naturally beautiful state. We enjoy 14 million acres of forest, enough to cover the entire state of Rhode Island 14 times over. We have 60,000 miles of rivers, creeks, and streams that tumble over more than 800 waterfalls throughout the state. Cedar glades, wetlands, and mountains harbor vast numbers of plants and animals. These areas are vital to the health and happiness of Tennesseans. Clean water and nature are fundamental to personal freedom. They are fundamental to each of our pursuit of happiness. They have been vital to my own pursuit of happiness and to that of my friends and family for as long as I can remember. I currently work in Shelby Park and Bottoms here in Nashville, 1,300 acres of protected public land. Every day I see people fishing, walking, biking, and running. Tennesseans all around the state find the freedom, joy, and services provided by nature every day, as they have for hundreds of years. Hunters and anglers find solace in wild places, all the while providing for themselves and their families. Hikers and campers find peace in the quiet splendor of Tennessee's state parks and other natural areas. Our state's forests and wetlands filter the water that we drink. They filter the water that grows our crops, the water that folks use to paddle, where people fish. Luckily, Tennessee has a rich heritage of protecting and preserving nature for all to enjoy. And this amendment ensures that our children and our children's children can enjoy this heritage. House Joint Resolution 50 ensures that clean water, clean air, and natural resources will be forever protected. The proposed amendment to the Tennessee Constitution reads, quote, "As trustee of these resources, the state shall conserve and maintain them for the benefit of all the people," end quote. I can think of few values more worth protecting, few values more American, few values more Tennessean than the freedom to enjoy beautiful and wild places. House Joint Resolution 50 takes this amendment one further step towards enshrining this value for future generations. We must act sooner rather than later to protect those who will inherit this state when we are gone. And that is why I support this amendment and ask you all to do the same. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have any questions for our witnesses? Chairman Halsey.
Just your thoughts. Right now, as I understand it, under the direction of mostly of the UN, there's participation in the United States, but the cloud seeding with sulfur dioxide out of airplanes, the thought of covering the canvas of the atmosphere in the earth will reflect the sun's rays back the other way, but of course, sulfur dioxide is a carcinogen. Would this amendment protect Tennessee people from that kind of environmental intrusion from the federal government and the UN?
That's a great question, Representative Halsey. So that was one of my initial questions, right? First time I read this, I'm like, this is great, but does this mean anyone can sue anyone about any environmental issue? And the answer is no, because it's a constitutional amendment. So what that means is that only when we're looking at issues where this body is concerned, a private interest might be concerned, or a private citizen might be concerned, that is the only time a constitutional amendment in Tennessee would apply. So if the federal government did something, this bill wouldn't really affect that or have anything to do with that.
Okay, thank you. And as a follow-up, just a little bit, I wondered how you tied in the right that the Constitution doesn't give. You lump it in with the pursuit of happiness. Did I hear you correctly? Okay.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you.
Do we have any other questions? Seeing no other questions, thank you all for being here. Just want to make sure. Thank you all for being here and taking your time of your day. Hope you have a safe trip home. We'll go back into session. We're back into session. Representative Jones, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Colleagues, I'm just going to speak from the heart right now because I want to just talk about why this is an important amendment to our state constitution. I've sat this session with so many of you. This is my favorite committee, as I've told the chairman. I'm learning as a member of the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee. I'm also the youngest member of this committee. And when I look at, we have a 6-year-old in the audience, I think about growing up in my grandma's backyard, playing in the creek, fishing for crawdads, and being able to experience our natural environment. And I want my children to have that same opportunity. Our U.S. Constitution protects the right to free speech, free religion, the right to bear arms, and to freely assemble, but we don't have such a basic right to protect our air and water, something that we cannot live without. This is just to start a conversation. We know that any constitutional amendment has to pass 2 general assemblies, and then it has to go before the voters. And so this is to start that conversation. We know this is a very long process to change our state constitution, but our state constitution is something that we all have the honor to uphold. And I think it's such an important provision to add to our state constitution for the generations who are coming after us. On this body, we voted about adding 2 rivers recently to the scenic, protection, and we know that over 50% of rivers in Tennessee are impaired. We know that we cannot exist. Our state, one of our mottos is agriculture, and I was just in Murray County meeting with cattle farmers, and we know that if we have contaminated soil, that our agriculture will not survive in this state. And so I hope that we can just move forward with this conversation to the full committee. And let more young people come. I think this is such an important conversation for my generation, and I hope to have your support for this as we move forward, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Representative Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the boldness to bring a constitutional amendment. My first question for you, Representative Jones, is where would you place this in the Tennessee Constitution?
You're recognized.
Thank you. It would go under the Bill of Rights section in Article 1, where we have all of our rights. And so it would be added to Article 1 of our state constitution as an amendment. We just voted on adding, we just recently had 4 constitutional amendments added to our state constitution in the most recent election that we know all passed. And so it would be added to the Article 1 of the state constitution.
Representative Fritz.
So Article 1, Declaration of Rights in the Tennessee Constitution. So one of the questions I have about this is I understand, I think, where you're trying to head with this, but we say we're a trustee of the air and the water. And so back to something Chairman Halsey just asked, how can we guarantee a right for which something that we have no control over? And let me expound on that just a minute. And just for the air, because I want clean air for my grandchildren as well. But most of the pollution in this world isn't coming from Tennessee. And so how do we guarantee that right to the people if we have other nations that are egregiously polluting the environment, air in this particular case? And how would we address that under your thoughts behind this?
Representative Jones.
Yes, thank you so much, Representative Fritz. So I think the first part of that is to say that that language of us being a trustee is something that I heard when I was in Murray County this past weekend, where a farmer told me that my land was not given to me by my parents, but it was loaned to me by my children. That's the mentality that we're having, is that all that we have is really not ours. It's for the generations who are coming up after. That's where that language of trustee comes in. It's honing in on the need to protect this for future generations. And I think what it will do is it will force us as a state to look at our decisions to say that what can we do to protect water where we see, pollution in our own community, where in America, 40% of Americans, according to the American Lung Association, live next to contaminants for their air, for their lung health. And so I think this is just really to give us another lens. That's all this is doing, is giving us a new lens as legislators. That anytime we vote on legislation or make decisions, we think about the next generation, and we think about the impact on the ecosystem that we're going to be bequeathing to them when they grow up.
Representative Fritz?
One last question. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One last question on this, I think. I just have a hard time. Our Constitution, I think our U.S. Constitution and our Tennessee Constitution, always tilt with a bias of favor toward the individual's rights. And I think I could argue that with most anybody. I'm just struggling to see how we would accomplish this when most of those things that we don't want to be breathing come from somewhere else other than the state of Tennessee. And maybe even other parts of the world, because as the jet streams and the systems move around the world, we're breathing the air of Asia and Europe and the South Pacific. The rain that falls here comes from those areas. I mean, it's just the way God created things to work. So I have a hard time supporting adding this to our Constitution, and the question would be this: how are we failing in our environmental laws and TDEC and things like that, so that we think that the action required is to amend the Constitution?
Representative Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to my friend Representative Fritz. I know these are very genuine. We talked about this outside of here, and I think the concerns that you bring are why we're hoping that Tennessee will lead in this conversation. There's been 3 states that have adopted this in their state constitution, one of them being Montana. Hopefully, our other southeastern surrounding states will follow Tennessee's lead, and Tennessee can be a leader in saying that we are a state that, because agriculture is so vital to our state, we want to make sure that we have uncontaminated water, uncontaminated soil, and clean air. And so we want to factor those decisions into what is happening in our state. What is being constructed in rural communities, where a lot of rural communities are seen as dumps for surrounding areas. That's an issue we're seeing, is that we have communities that are seen as disposable, and communities that are seen as the wastelands of even our states around us. We have a Louisiana company trying to build a landfill here, not even based in Tennessee. And so I think that, we have to have these conversations as a state and look at how can we lead on the global stage even. Tennessee never has to wait for the federal government or the global community to act, but we can act because we know that for our state, without agriculture, our state would not thrive. That is the heartbeat of Tennessee. And so when we look at clean air, I think that there are things we can do in Tennessee to address pollutants in our air, even in our own system. When I went to, you're in East Tennessee, I remember meeting with folks in Sweetwater, and when some companies were there was issues with polluted water when companies were there, and people dealing with cancer from that. And these were people who I met just walking around Sweetwater, went to the dinner bell and talked to folks. And so I really hope that we can just continue this conversation. And a part of this amendment, because it still would have to be voted on by the voters, would be going around the state and getting, talking to people about what this would mean for our state to lead when it comes to clean air, clean water, and unpolluted soil for future generations. I really think it's about that conversation that we need to have as a state, from Mountain City to Memphis.
Last time, Mr. Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I apologize. Important topic. I'm afraid that if we do this, we disadvantage those Tennessee farmers and foresters on the global scale, because when I hear leading in a global market or an economy, there's no compulsion for those Europe and Asia and the South Pacific to comply with what we've done. And I'm afraid that the implementation of wherever we might insert this into the Tennessee Constitution would perhaps be a damning thing for the economy in our state. So thank you for your effort. I can't support it.
Thank you so. Oh, sorry.
You recognize.
Thank you so much, Representative Fritz. I acknowledge your commentary, but I think that this will actually be beneficial to our economy long term. Investing in clean air, clean water, and a livable community is the only thing that will make our economy, our agricultural economy, survive. I think by making sure that we have arable soil, which is something that we don't talk about. I was talking about it with my friend Representative Reedy about even to talk about what does it mean to have arable soil, so that we have the biomass, so we can protect soil for agriculture in our state. We have to have these conversations because we see what's going on all around us in our environment with increased flooding, with extreme heat. The Mississippi River was at its lowest level in recorded history most recently, and so I think we really need to have these conversations, and I don't think it will hurt any businesses outside of Tennessee. These are about decisions that are happening here. How do we protect our water? Just like we're talking about the Duck River and the Chickamauga River we were talking about. Like, these are about local decisions. There's a saying, they say, think globally but act locally. We can't control what these other countries do, but we can control what we do for our constituents. That's why we have other rights in our Bill of Rights, to protect our constituents, because we know that we have an obligation at the state level to act where the federal government and global community have failed. We're the government that is closest to the people in a lot of senses, so we have an obligation to lead and to speak for them. And to do it in a way that this bill is not, even a partisan issue. I think that's the beauty of this bill, is that clean air, clean water, and unpolluted soil doesn't matter what party you are. We all need these things, and all of our constituents need these things. And so again, it's just about starting a new conversation. Really what this is this is an amendment for people who don't have a voice. It's for the generations who are coming up after us, those who have yet to be born. And one of my mentors, I always remember, she always told me, she said, when we were growing up, even though we had yet to meet you, we still loved you. And that's why we acted. And I have that same love, for my children who are not yet born. I really want them to enjoy the same things that I enjoyed. I love being able to fish for crawdads. I love being able to go out hiking with my granddad. And to be able to enjoy the natural environment around us. TDEC knows I made a goal to make it to every state park in our state by the time my term is over, because I love our natural environment. This is one of the things why I'm so grateful to be on the Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee, because I've learned so much from many of you on here, farmers. I've learned about regenerative agriculture from Representative Reedy. I got to come to your farm, Chairman Grills, but I really am learning on this committee, and I want us to protect these things for those who are coming up after us. And so whatever we can do to start that conversation, whatever I can do, I want to be a part of that, and I hope that we can do that together. So,
You were mentioning Chairman Reedy. You want to read?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I need to make a comment here, because our rights come from God, not man. I consider myself an environmentalist. I live and work on a fourth-generation family farm, and I'm expected as a farmer to take care of that for the next generation, which is my kids. There's 4 springs on this piece of land. I'm responsible for that, and I'm all about less government and more local control. If we put this in our Constitution, it's telling me, government, come in and tell me how to run my operation, and I cannot support this. Thank you.
May I respond?
Rick, yes, you're recognized.
This is not about a government mandate or forcing government to tell people how to act. If that were the case, we would not have any constitutional amendments. We would not need the Declaration of Rights section in our state constitution. We have added provisions, and I think some of my colleagues on this committee about the Second Amendment, protections in our state constitution. We added the right to work in our state constitution recently. We just voted on that the last election. We voted on removing slavery from our state constitution. And so the state constitution is a social contract with us and with the generations who are coming up after us. And so this is not about a government mandate. This is just about giving us another lens to examine the policy decisions we make and the community decisions we make. I believe in the beloved community, and I believe that this is about having a conversation that centers that beloved community, all of us to equally consider the impacts of decisions, not just on an individual level, but on a communal level, because what we do is in community. We would not be here without community. And I know that, again, by talking to people who are farming and seeing how they have this idea of stewarding the land and why they want to protect things like the Duck River from being polluted and how that will impact their agriculture. And so I think I respect those comments, but I just don't think that this is about forcing the government to mandate anything, but it's just about giving us a lens as public policymakers to make decisions that are in the best interest of those who are coming up after us.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Representative, for having a vision. I think, and I only speak personally, I'm only speaking personally on the committee, but where there's no vision, people perish. Thank you for the idea of looking ahead, because where we are today is certainly not where we will be years to come. So I thank you for the idea. I do think we need to give some thought and some recognition to what we will face in the days to come. Clean air, clean water. I just had someone to come to my office this morning talking about clean water, how important it is to preserve that and to make sure that we look out for it in the future. So thank you for at least starting this conversation. Even if this don't get into the Constitution, I thank you for having that vision, because just as sure as we sit here on this committee today, one day, which we all probably will be gone, somebody will say, you had a good idea. I think for us to not do anything is more detrimental than to do something. And maybe, I don't know if putting it in the Constitution is all the right thing to do, but I do know that you got the right idea. And I want to compliment you for having the right idea. I just want to say that. Thank you.
Chairman, you're recognized.
Oh, thank you so much, Representative Shaw. And I think that, that will preach. That is the word for today. It's about the vision for the next generation. And when none of us are sitting here anymore, what will this world look like, and what will we leave for those generations coming up after us? So thank you so much, Representative Shaw.
Chairman Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think we probably all agree on this committee and with the folks that have presented today that we all want clean water and clean air, clean soil. We want the best for our children and our grandchildren. There's no question about that, and that's why we come up here every day and do what we do to try to ensure that. I think one of my questions has already been answered. It wasn't phrased like I was probably going to phrase it about what problem is this solving, but yeah, I think that's been presented, and I don't really see this solving a problem, quite frankly. I think it's making a statement, and a resolution does that. I think there are a lot of this that's intended here we're already doing. I think the taxpayers of this state spend a lot of money every year on protecting these very things through TDEC primarily, but certainly other agencies as well. And we're obviously in charge of that and how that money is spent and how it's invested. I think we're always looking at ways to improve that on the local level, from rulemaking with the state and even working with other stakeholders to make sure that we protect our resources for our future generations and ourselves. So I think we're already doing all of this. I think there are a number of unintended consequences that could come from this. I think definitions can change. This is very lacking in definitions, and I think that's where we get into some subjectivity in the future. And so I think the unintended consequences have me greatly concerned here, and so I would not be able to support this. But I do appreciate your effort, and again recognize that we all want the same things. I think our goals are the same here. I think just the way we get to it maybe that where we have some differences of opinion, and I firmly believe, especially having worked in this field for my whole career, I see what we're doing, what the hands and feet are doing on a daily basis on the ground, and feel like that we can always make improvements, but I think that's what we're striving to do, is coming here and working for our constituents, is to make those improvements in very meaningful ways. So thank you for your efforts, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Todd. Thank you, Chairman Todd, for your comments. And I think this is about vision, honestly. I think what this is doing is just like when our framers created our state constitution. Every right there was a vision of what those who would be Tennesseans, what would protect them, and what would be the long-term vision of this state we call Tennessee. And when I look at our state constitution, we protect, again, freedom of religion. You know, in our state constitution, there was once a time where ministers, you know, so Representative Shaw and I would not be able to serve in the legislature. That was in our state constitution, but it has evolved as we as a state have evolved. We have the right to work that was just put in our state constitution. We just took out slavery from our state constitution this past election. So I think this is really about a long-term vision for our state. And more importantly, I think it is to recognize that we make laws, but the state constitution is the thing that is supreme over all of our laws. And that when we look at what is lasting in our state constitution, that's why it's so difficult to change our state constitution. This would take 2 general assemblies going before the voters, and then it would, you know, this would take years. But this is just the beginning of that process, because we don't want to be, you know, easily manipulating our state constitution. Is a very difficult process, but it is a very important process. And so I think, you know, looking at protecting clean air, clean water, it is something that we would want to do the best, not just as good as we can, but we want to do the absolute best for those generations who are coming up after us. I don't want my children to grow up in a Tennessee where 50% of the rivers are impaired. I don't want my children to grow up in a Tennessee where 40% of Americans live next to unhealthy levels of air pollution. You know, I just want them to be able to just play in nature and to be able to go biking and just be able to live and thrive. I don't want my children to just survive. I want them to thrive in Tennessee. I want them to flourish in Tennessee. I want them to have a better quality of life than I have and than any of us have. And that's what my grandma taught me. My grandma was the one who taught me about gardening. I told you on the first week of this committee that the first people to teach me about agriculture and caring for the natural resources were my grandmas in the backyard, telling me how to care for what we have and to say that, you know, this is how we can care for ourselves. If we care for the earth, if we care for our environment, it will care for us. And I really believe that. And I just think that this is such an important conversation. That as our state is growing, as our state is just, there's so many people moving here that sometimes we slow down and forget that we are part of an ecosystem. And I think that is a very dangerous trajectory sometimes if we don't stop and pause and say, okay, you know, Nashville, you have all these millions of people coming here, but, you know, how will we continue to make sure that we have clean air? The Cumberland River, is the pollution in the Cumberland River, the source of drinking water for my constituents, we can do better. And in Nashville, the city government, it's on them, but we need to do better. And so I just think that we as a state can lead on this, and I hope to have, you know, support of my colleagues on this to keep the conversation moving forward. Thank you.
I've got one comment here I want to make. In your resolution, it says the right to clean air, pure water, and the preservation of the natural, scenic, historic, and aesthetic values of the environment. And I just want to give a shout out to the efforts that TDEC puts forth for the clean air, the pure water, the Parks Department, and how they are constantly working to try to preserve the preservation of the natural, scenic, historic, and aesthetic values of the environment. Over and over again, TDEC is coming forth trying to reassure the Tennesseans that they are doing that, and I feel like they're doing a good job. The state shall conserve and maintain them for the benefit of all people. I feel like TDEC is pretty much doing what you're asking right now to the best of their ability, and probably doing it better than any other Department of Environment in the country, in my opinion. But with that, that was just a statement.
May I respond, Mr. Chair?
Yes, sir, please.
Thank you so much, and I definitely don't want this to be an anti-TDEC. Ms. Blair knows that I respect TDEC agriculture. You know, I'm grateful for our commissioners and for the department. This is just to make something more permanent. I serve on Government Operations Committee, and every 4 years we vote: are we going to continue TDEC, or are we not going to? Are we going to sunset it? So, you know, this is just to have that long-term vision where TDEC, Department of Agriculture, we vote to continue them every 4 years. You know, we don't know what the vision will be in the long term, but we know that the state constitution is permanent. Hopefully, if we're here as a state, God willing, and so. You know, this is definitely not to go against TDEC. It's to support them. It's to undergird them. It's to you know, to give our sanction as a state to say that we stand with you and we want to make sure that this is long lasting for generations yet to come. So, thank you.
Well, I do know that you said you wanted to make every park. Let me give you a piece of advice. If you do come to Reelfoot Lake State Park, make sure you come in the wintertime because the mosquitoes are rough in the summer.
Yeah.
With that, we'll have a
question
on the bill. Since no one else has a question. All those in favor of sending HJR 50 to full committee, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? No. Bill dies.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative.
Thank you all.
We rolled, we're at the hill of our calendar now, HJR 0137 by
Mr.
Representative. Chairman Reedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I move that we take House Joint Resolution 137 by Towns and return it to the clerk's desk.
We have a motion and a second to return HJR 137 to the clerk's desk. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Back to the clerk's desk it goes. Well, that concludes our calendar. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for being here throughout the last few weeks. We had a good time. Seemed like we had a pretty good committee as a whole. And if we don't have any other further business, this is our last committee. The Agricultural and Natural Resources Subcommittee is closed, subject to the call of the chair.